So this is 3.5? Is it 3.5 or 3.4? 3.4. Describing quantitative distributions. So we want to describe the data, and we have been doing that. Basically, today is just taking everything that we've been learning over this unit and putting it together. Okay? So when we describe, the first thing that we want to do is to give it context. Don't forget, context is the first thing that is important. And in the context, we need to make sure that we say what? What are the two pieces of information that are context? What are the most two pieces of information? This is coming actually from Unit 1. From Unit 1, our very first unit. But which one of those? How is not one of the most important ones. That has to be. Why was not one of those? What and where? I heard it back. And who? What and who? So when we start the problems, and you're going to be writing sentences, or you don't, I mean, it doesn't have to. You want to use bullet points? We're perfectly fine with you using bullet points, and just, you don't have to use fully long, elegant sentences. But basically, the first sentence that you're going to write is the distribution of blank is ... Okay, so now inside this blank is the what and the who. So this is the what and who for there, if it's available. So the distribution of siblings, number of siblings for stat students, for example, when we were talking about that. The distribution of, we're taking about what is the variable that we are measuring, okay? So what is the distribution of, and we say the variable. So when we say what, we're referring to the variable. And then who. If the most important thing is you need to give me the variable. The distribution of farm size. The distribution of grades. The distribution of shoe sizes. The distribution of heights, weights, whatever the variable is that we're recording. What is it that we're recording? We want to start out by giving that context. Okay, so this is context. That's your first part of the sentence. Then we need to talk about the other things that we have talked about during this course. And we talked about 4 different things so far about what those distributions are. What do you think those 4 things are that we have, or what are those things that we have been talking about in this unit? When we were describing the distribution, when we're describing the histogram or the dot plots. What is that? No, what did we do? What did we describe? When we were looking at something, if I gave you a histogram and I said, what does it look like? We were describing the something. There's maybe something there. The first one was shape. The shape. The first thing that we did was shape. And when we talk about shape, we're going to talk about symmetry. And peaks. All right, symmetry, so we might say it's symmetrical, or we might say it's what? Skewed, maybe left or skewed right. We need to make sure we do that. And we talk about single, which we call If you say single peak, we understand. We're not going to be huge, but the correct vocabulary is unimodal for one peak, bimodal when there was two peaks, and when there was no peaks, we call that uniform. Yes, yes. No peaks, unimodal, bimodal. Where like the data kind of like goes all the way up and then it comes down. No, those are two different things. So you can do symmetrical and, so it's correct. So you have to do both of them, symmetrical and unimodal. Symmetrical and two peaks, if you want to say the peaks words, will be okay. Or it is skewed left and one peak, unimodal. So that's shape. The next thing that we talked about, we're calculating the what's. This is from Unit 2. What did we do at the end of Unit 2? What did we find? What did we learn how to calculate? It's on here. It's up there. It's on the board. What was the main thing that we found at the very end? Outliers. Slash, we also want to talk about gaps. So, is there any potential outliers or gaps? Now, I'm going to put a little star here, because if there are no outliers or gaps in the data. Now, what do I mean by a gap? Yeah, so there's a big space and then the data kind of takes over again. So it's not bimodal goes like this, right? Bimodal just goes here. But if it's like there's a peak and then there's like no data, a gap, and then it kind of goes back up again, that's not bimodal necessarily. That's like, well, that's a gap, okay? That's a gap in the data. So if you see like the data and there's a big space and then more data, that's not necessarily an outlier. Now, I put a red star here because if there are no outliers or gaps, then you don't have to mention it. If you want to say no outliers and gaps, you can say that. But if you don't talk about it, that's okay. You only need to mention it if it is there. The next thing that we talked about was measures of center. Yes, so this is the mean or the median or where typical is around. Now, when I say where typical is around, this can be a little bit tricky. And we're going to have some discussion about this, where does the typical happen? Because if I'm giving the mean or the median, I might give those numbers. But if I just have a histogram, I don't have those numbers. And we're gonna do an example.
Around? Typical is around. He's gonna explain what typical.
When we get an example, we're gonna have to see an example to do that one. Where typical is around. And the last thing that we just learned recently, yesterday, were measures of, which is a measure of, what is that? I think you said it. What is the title of the lesson? Standard deviation is this measure. There we go, IQR spread. This is the IQR range, standard deviation, or where most is around. Put quotations, where most is around. And I will give you an example right there. Now, this is what we would call a mnemonic device in context. So when we say don't forget socks, don't forget your socks, we're talking about shape, outliers, center, spread. Shape, outliers, center, spread. Socks. Socks is shape, outliers, center, spread. Now, all we're asking you to do is to talk about each of these. So when we say on this assessment to describe, we're going to give you some dot plot, a histogram. We're going to give you a box plot. We're going to ask you to describe. And these are the 5 things you need to do. It doesn't even have to be in order. No. But we need to make, it helps us as graders, but you just make sure that you do it. And if you want to do it in bullet points, you can do that. We're going to do an example, and then that'll be our lesson for today. And then your homework is literally going to do 2 of what we're going to see right now. Okay?
Yep, and then obviously you have to remember the contact part.
Yeah, the center. So, most problems, and I didn't want you to do this, you're going to find the mean and median. You're going to find the standard deviation and IQR, or we'll give them to you. So you would just tell me what those values are. But in the real world, in real data, you don't have what those numbers are exactly. So I wanted you to at least have 1 day of practice where you're going to look at the histogram and say, you know what, it's around here. So let's look at an example. Let's look back to your notes. Here we go. When do we do histograms? So let's take this one right here. I'm gonna erase what you don't need to write. All right, I'm gonna give you a few minutes to copy down this histogram that we made earlier on, and this histogram represents your class data for how many siblings. This was your class data for how many siblings. We'll give you some time to copy this down. This is our example, so that you can see how to do it. Then we're gonna do socks. Some people use a different one called cuss. Some people like to cuss instead of socking. CUSS. Center unusual features, shape and spread. I like socks because the Red Sox. And I don't like to curse. I don't like to cuss.
You don't?
Not around here.
That doesn't mean you don't like it.
Well, I can code switch.
Teachers don't curse.
That's a lie.
They go by the teacher's lounge.
I don't curse.
I love my job when I get to teach like this.
What? You don't curse? Not here.
Yeah.
I only curse at home.
When you're actually talking professional, that's it.
When I'm at home, I don't either.
I feel like I don't curse. Like maybe on text message. I feel like not really out of my mouth.
Well, just a little bit under a minute left for this.
Right.
I should be able to leave. I'm gonna leave this up here the entire class. So this will be here. We're gonna practice this together real quick. We're gonna write out the answers for here.
Guys, get in the habit. It says frequency. Get in the habit of writing frequency on the left, like on your x-axis, because no one is doing it. And I'm taking off points on your test if you don't write frequency. So it's great that you have the title and you have the y-axis.
How I explain this? You know how bar was the number of siblings, and you said
Bar graph, yes.
so it's a bar
Yes,
graph.
you're thinking of a bar graph. If you were saying like the numbers on the bottom and you were labeling it, that's like this.
All right. So what is the first thing we need to describe? So here's the question. Describe the distribution. This is the example. We are going to describe Describe the distribution.
Yep.
10 and 13. 2 and 1.
That's a one. He has a tail on the bottom, that's why.
Yeah. Well, can it be a 2?
Yes, it can.
Can it be a 2? Is it the same height?
No, that's it.
That's it. As David's gonna say, it's common sense.
Wow.
That's what he says. That's what he says. How do you know? Because you know. It's common sense, right, David? All right, so let's do this. So, 1, what's the first thing that we need to describe?
Shape.
Before that. Context. So, the distribution of blank. Okay, so the distribution of what? What are we talking about here? Number of siblings in where? For who? For stat students.
Because this is our data.
But in some instances, you may not know who it is about, but this was our class data. That's why we're taking it.
And remember,
So,
step 1 is the context. It's not hard socks. ...
You must know the context before stop.
Now, let's get to the next thing. Number 2. What's the next thing that we need to talk about? Shape. So is
A box.
how would we describe the shape? Skewed is blank. So this is skewed. Skewed right.
Okay, guys, we're running out of time. Be quiet.
And what? And what? How many peaks?
2. We talking about the
How many peaks go into this? There's 1. So it is in unimodal.
The highest.
Oh. You know what?
3. So once again, this was the shape. How many? Like the peak of the mountain. 3. All right. Center. This is center. And then there's no outliers here, so we're not going to even mention outliers. And then the last one is spread. So what does the typical student have? The typical student has
8. 4.
the typical student has about how many siblings? Not 4, but somewhere in there, right? So that's 1 to what? 1 to 3 siblings. 1 to 3 siblings, because remember, this is 1 to 3. Where do most students have where? Most students, where is like the majority of all of them? We're like, most students have 1 to, I would even go further. No, that's just all the way to 7. That's too far. 1 to 6. Because, most students have 1 to 6 siblings. Now, the reason why, because look at this, remember, this only goes up to 6. 7 is counted in here. So this is 1 through 6. So this would be most. Okay, most of them. That's spread. Most everybody is right here, 1 to 7. Now, there are some few that have out here, but they're not the majority, right? This is like where are most of them kind of around? Most of them are right around here, and that's how you describe shape. Okay? On your homework, I've given you 2 histograms, 2 of them that look like this, and you're going to do this for each one of those.
Can we just rename this thing?
technical terms, stat terms.
So like, yes.
So